Sony just announced the PSVR2. We've got January's PS Now games, a new PlayStation 5 game is moving over to PC. If you want to stay PS ready, make sure you're subscribed and have your notifications set to all. Alright, so in the last video we talked about how this month is actually really good for PlayStation Plus between Deep Rock Galactic and Persona 5 Strikers. You've got a ton of game there that are actually like well-reviewed games, and Persona 5 Strikers came out last year, so that was a great month for PlayStation Plus. We just got the games that are coming to PlayStation Now this month, and they're also pretty good. They're not as good as the PlayStation Plus games, but they're not bad either. So if you're paying for the service, you're actually getting some decent stuff this month. First up, we got Final Fantasy 12, the Zodiac Age. This is basically a re-release of Final Fantasy 12. Now, honestly, I've talked about this in the last video I did, but I haven't played a ton of Final Fantasy games. But every time I used to say I don't like JRPG combat that's turn-based, everyone would recommend Final Fantasy 12 because I guess it has more action-based combat. So I think I might check this one out with my PlayStation Now subscription. The next game is an indie game called Fury Unleashed. Now, at first I thought this was a game that's already been on PlayStation Plus called Fury, which is like a boss rush game that I highly recommend. It's one of the coolest indie games I've ever played. This one is actually like a side scroller, it looks like, but it's got some pretty cool art. So if you want to try out an indie game, and it also looks like it has co-op, this might be a good one to check out. If you really want to wrestle with the input on your PS5 and PS4, you can download Kerbal Space Program. Now, on the surface, this game looks like a cute game where you make a rocket ship and try to make it blast off, but the math that you need to know to actually make it work is absolutely insane. It's very complex. It is way too smart of a game for me, but I guess people really like it. I don't really know how it's going to translate to the PlayStation controller because it's a very PC centric game, but if you're feeling like you want to try something risky out, maybe give this one a shot. Fourth on the list is my favorite of this bunch, Mortal Kombat 11. Now, it looks like this is just the base edition of the game, which is kind of a bummer because they're done updating the game. You'd think at least they could put on some of the extra content packs, like all the different characters, or maybe even the Aftermath expansion. I played through all of these games last year leading up to the movie, and the games definitely a lot better than the movie. The movie was a great start, but the story in the games was way better. I liked Mortal Kombat 11's story the best because it features my boy Liu Kang. He's the main character. You get to do some cool stuff as him. It has great graphics. It's a lot slower than Mortal Kombat X, like you feel a lot heavier with your attacks. The fatality system is still awesome. I just love this game. I think everyone should check it out, and if you really like it on PlayStation Now, the full like complete edition goes on sale all the time. I'm sure it's still on sale right now from Christmas. You should just download everything because it's great. And then finally, weirdly enough, we have an indie game that I just talked about here on the channel called Super Time Force Ultra. This one's actually been on PlayStation Plus before, way back when it came out, and the interesting thing about it is that it's the last game I ever played on my PlayStation Vita before booting it up a couple months ago for a video. It's pretty good. It doesn't play all that well on Vita if you're looking to play it there, but I'm also not sure if this even will let you download it on Vita. It's like a side scroller where you can rewind and mess around with time. I don't know, this is 6 pretty decent games, so if you have PlayStation Now, it's probably worth at least checking a couple of them out. My biggest recommendation obviously is Mortal Kombat 11, but it's been on sale so much for like $10 with the entire collection of DLC that also I think comes with a free PS5 upgrade. So like, if you're really feeling cheap, you can go with this PS4 version that's going to get taken off PS Now eventually, or you can just go to Best Buy and pick up the full complete edition again for like $10. I would probably do that. The game's really good. So the first half of the year is a big month for Sony on PC specifically because not only do we have God of War coming at the end of January, we also have Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy coming in the Legacy of Thieves collection later this year. We now know the next game after God of War and Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection that's coming to PC, and that is Death Stranding's director's cut. Now, this was a weird one because way back when the game was announced at PlayStation Experience, it said that it was coming to PC at some point, and then Sony like stripped that from all the marketing, and it turned out to be because they're not actually the publisher on PC. It's the company 505 Games who published Control. So when Sony announced the director's cut of Death Stranding, it was kind of weird because everyone was like, is it going to come to PC as well? And it looks like it's the same agreement that they had with the first version of the game. They just had to wait a few months after launch to announce the director's cut. But yeah, it's coming in spring of 2022, which is a huge range, and it's very soon, so I don't know why they can't just nail down a release date. They've been updating it on Steam for like months now. It's super frustrating because with the original release of Death Stranding on PC, they did the same thing. They said it was coming in spring of 2020, and then they said summer, and then it came out in July. So I really hope this doesn't happen with this, because I've been waiting a long time. I don't want to rebuy the game on PlayStation 5 because I already own it and I have a save, so I'd like to use that save because it doesn't have cross save. So yeah, long story short, Death Stranding's director's cut is coming to PC in spring of 2022. I would guess probably around February or March, hopefully February. All right, so like I said at the beginning of the video, Sony has officially announced the PSVR2, and it looks like it's going to be a major upgrade from the PSVR 1. I mean, it would have to try pretty hard to not be a major upgrade from that headset, but this one actually looks super exciting. So we're gonna start out with the controllers because that's actually how Sony announced the headset way back. They didn't show us the headset. In fact, they didn't show us the headset tonight. They just talked about it. The original thing they announced was the controllers because they're obviously super excited and they're a huge selling point. So these things are called the Sense controllers, which makes sense because basically what they are is a DualSense split in half. They have haptic feedback, they have adaptive triggers, so you have one Sense controller in each hand, and if you combine those, that makes a DualSense controller for the PS5. It's good naming on Sony's part. I like that they keep these things streamlined. Now, just taking one look at these controllers, they're basically a perfect trifecta of if you took the DualSense, the Valve Knuckles, and the Oculus Touch controllers, took all of the best design features and functionalities of all of those different controllers, mashed them all together, and made the ultimate controller for VR. And going down to the controllers, they have the touch detection that the Oculus controllers have. And you wouldn't initially think that that's like an important feature, but when you're in the VR world and you can see your hands in front of you, when you touch your thumbs to the thumbsticks and your VR hands do the same thing, it helps with the immersion so much and stops you from getting motion sick. Or it stops me from getting motion sick at least. And if you compare these to the controllers you're using on the PSVR 1, which are the PS3 Move controllers that were made to be like Wii controllers, and then Sony decided they would work with the PSVR, it is not even a comparison. Even if these things are like 80% useful, like they're 80% as good as they should be, they're going to be 1,000 times better than the Move controllers. They were unreliable and they were just like kind of a weird gimmick, right? Like they had those laying around and they were like, oh, these will work for the PSVR. But now it seems like this thing was designed with the controllers first and then they moved on to the headset, which is exactly what I want to see. Speaking of the headset, again, we didn't see it, but just from the specs, I can tell this thing is premium. Obviously, its biggest competitor is the Oculus Quest 2, and starting out with the two screens that go in front of your eyes, those are both going to be noticeably better from go. Not only are they OLED screens, which the Oculus Quest doesn't have, they're higher resolution. So the Oculus Quest 2, I have it up right here, is 1832 by 1920 pixels per eye, and this one is 2000 by 2040 pixels per eye. Now the Oculus Quest 2, I gotta give it credit, it's the VR headset I use the most. You cannot see the screen door effect on that headset, which was the biggest problem with the Quest 1 and an even bigger problem with the PSVR 1, but it will no longer be an issue at all with the PSVR 2. It's gonna be even better. There will be even less screen door effect on this headset, which is dope. But the biggest and arguably best change of all here is that they got rid of all the cables except for one. You just need one USB-C cable that plugs into the headset and then plugs into your PS5. No more do you need that weird halfway box and a bunch of other different cables to go between your PS4 and your PSVR. Now that we're in the PS5 generation, we've got single cable. Now I know a lot of people are going to point out that with the Oculus Quest 2, you can actually play wirelessly on your PC and use it as an Oculus Rift. You can use AirPlay, which is a built-in feature, or you can use Virtual Desktop, or you can do the same thing as the PSVR 2 and plug a USB-C cord into the headset and then your PC. You've got a lot of options there, but if you want to just play Quest 2 games, the headset works on its own without a PC, which is a great feature. The difference is obviously Sony is going to go for a lower cost with this headset and making it a standalone headset that plays PSVR games separately from the PlayStation 5 in addition to the ones on the PlayStation 5. That's just going to drive up the cost. I know the Quest 2 sells for around $349, but if you look into it at all, you'll realize that Facebook, or Meta as they're called now, take a huge loss on every headset because their goal is to get as many headsets out there as possible so people are spending money on the exclusive Oculus stores. So Sony, by making it so this headset is doing all the processing on the actual console, can make it cheaper. I would imagine it's going to be around the same price as the original one, around $250, which is $100 less than the Oculus Quest 2, and that'll be very competitive because again, Sony has the games, right? They announced a new Horizon game tonight, a totally totally original Horizon game called Horizon Call of the Mountain, and this one's being co-developed by Guerrilla Games and Firesprite Games, who Sony actually just picked up a few months ago. So they had something in mind when they picked up this awesome VR studio, and it's a new game in the Horizon universe. They actually showed off a trailer for it, and it looks like it's going to be pretty cool. The character you're playing as is with another character on what looks like a canoe, and you're floating down the river, and you almost get stepped on by a tall neck. But I did notice that this is another on-rails looking experience. Sony was notorious for those with stuff like Until Dawn, Rush of Blood, and if you go on the Oculus Quest 2, you can play games like Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, which is a totally standalone open world game. So I'm gonna want to see more stuff like that from Sony that's really like an actual game and not a VR experience. I think Horizon was a great franchise to show off first. That's one of Sony's biggest franchises. They obviously have a brand new game coming out for it, but I would like to see more games like what Insomniac, who Sony just recently bought, was making exclusively for the Oculus Rift, ironically. They had a game called Stormland VR, which was an open world first-person shooter in VR, and it was basically like Robot Far Cry, and it was awesome. We know Insomniac can make these games. I understand, again, why they would show off Horizon first, but I want to see more games like that from Sony, because we now finally have a console that can push these insane VR graphics. And then going back to the screen, this thing is going to have 90 Hz and 120 Hz support, so it's going to be super smooth when you're moving your head around. And the best part here, the biggest improvement of all, the real best one, is that it has inside-out tracking. So with the PSVR 1, you needed the camera, you needed the light bar, you needed all this different stuff to be able to track the headset, and then it didn't even work that well. But now there's 4 cameras on the actual headset that track the positioning of your hands in the world around you. It makes it so much more accurate. Like, if they do it as well as the Quest 2, it's going to be awesome. So yeah, that basically covers everything we know about the PSVR 2. This seems like a much better platform to build off of than the PSVR 1. Sony's obviously trying to get people on board with the concept, but now they have the headset to really back it up, and I think they probably have a ton of VR games in development ready to go, probably, because this headset allegedly was supposed to be out a lot sooner, but because of supply chain issues that everyone is experiencing, the parts got so expensive that Sony really couldn't afford to put it out. So I'm assuming they've had games ready to go, or at least in development, for a while now. And then the last thing we got to talk about is the release date. Apparently Sony is targeting holiday 2022. So right at the beginning of the year, they're announcing the headset, and at the end of the year, or hopefully by the end of the year, we're finally going to be playing this thing. Honestly, I'm super excited. I really like my Oculus Quest 2. I obviously like playing games on the actual headset wirelessly, but I also love playing games with it connected to my PC. And whenever I do it, I know you can do it wirelessly, I still end up using a USB-C cord because it's like 0 latency, and that's the smartest way to go for Sony. And then when Sony puts out a PS5 Pro, they can also put out a PSVR 2 Pro, and that'll probably be able to take advantage of the wireless feature that the Oculus Quest has. And again, Sony is probably going to undercut the price. I mean, they have to, right? If they're coming out and selling this thing for $350 alongside the Oculus Quest 2, which has a bit more feature set and a lot more games available, I think that's going to be a tough sell. But if they can undercut the price, which it seems like they're doing because it's not a standalone headset, they're going to be golden. But either way, I'm going to get one. I'd love to hear what you think down in the comments below. And remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.